Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, December 10th, 2023, coming at you live from Florida Media in Rockville Center. Got another outstanding show coming up for you tonight. Nick Alberga, host of Leafs Morning Take, writer at the Leafs Nation, and co-host of NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast, will be joining us to talk NHL, to talk Toronto Maple Leafs. With me tonight is Stefen Rosner, as always. My name is Sean Cuthbert. Stefen Rosner, how are you?
I'm doing very well because I'm in a very comfortable sweatshirt. Hanukkah gift. So it says,
wow.
Eat, sleep, hockey. Right now, we did the sleeping. We did the eating today. So
okay. We're doing the hockey.
We're doing the hockey. We're going to try to do the hockey.
We're going to try to do that hockey. A gift every night, buddy? All 8 days? How does it work?
No, my parents have been away, so they came
I'm a
over
Christmas
and said,
guy, so.
They said, well, I think you know how it works. Do you want me to explain the Festival of Lights to you?
I don't know if we have time.
We don't. So anyway, no, one gift is all I get, and I'm happy with it. It's really good.
It's a very nice sweater.
It's very comfortable.
It looks comfortable.
Yes.
All right, folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. I'm going to tell you all about our wonderful sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Satisfy your hunger at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com. Also happy to be sponsored by Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd and unplug your game at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. And also proud to be sponsored by Razor and Kniff Attorneys at Law, ready to fight for you. Check them out. At razorandkniff.com, RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. So, Stefen, another successful week here for the New York Islanders. 2-0-1. Doesn't start off great because, well, it was the same song and dance. Groundhog Day once again against the Sharks on Tuesday. They have a 4-1 lead with about, I think it was like 8 minutes to go in the third period.
You're correct.
And the Islanders found a way to squander said lead, and they lost to the worst team in the league heading into that game. I believe they still are. 5-4 in overtime, and it wasn't a happy night for the Islanders or their fans.
Yeah, I guess the positives, yet again, are you get the lead. I mean, this is a Sharks team that the Islanders were kind of toying with through the first two periods there, where they had, first off, they had chances early in that game where you said, okay, the fact that they didn't go up 3-0 in the opening 5 minutes, could this come back to bite them? No pun intended. Sure. And then you said, okay, you know what? They're in control. Like, they should be okay. And then it was just backdoor wide open. Hartl had himself a fantastic game, a hat trick, but the Islanders just could not cover up in front of goal. They scored 2 goals with the empty net, and then it goes into overtime. And I don't want to say it's bad back checking, but Barzal and Nelson didn't do a lot really to help Sorokin. Sorokin doesn't come up with the save that he probably wants. Yes, he was screened, but it was just one of those games where you went into overtime and thinking, oh, if they lose this one, right? Like, again, after you talk about taking steps and things like that, to lose that one, again, they came off probably their best. We talked about it. Their best win against Florida.
Right.
The way they held the lead there and said, okay, they're playing the Sharks. Like, is this a trap game? Can it be a trap game against a team that hasn't really proven to be like an elite team this year? Not really, but you said, okay, they beat Florida. The week ahead of them, it's a tough week. Like, you play Columbus, you should probably win, and then you're going to play LA to end the week. That's going to be a tough one. So
it was I mean, it was so Islanders. I mean, it was very 23-24 Islanders, but just Islanders in general. Like I tweeted a month ago, like when I think Ardo Cal tweeted like the Sharks are opening the season 0-8-1, and I was like, mark 12-5. The Islanders are losing that game. I didn't want to be right, but it just felt like one of those games, and I was there, and I have to say, when the Sharks scored the overtime winner, I just like howled laughing. Because it was just like, of course, because it's just so Islanders. But, you know, this is a loss that you could have seen being something that might have just devastated the team, and it could have put them in a little bit of a rut, especially because they've already been very conscious of blowing all the leads. They've finally been acknowledging in the media saying it can't happen anymore, and obviously they self-destruct against the Sharks in the third period. But little ray of hope, they come back against the Blue Jackets, and not only do they beat them, but they really take it to them in the third period. They actually have a killer instinct. They run up the score, 7-3 wins. So a little encouraging. You know, CBJ isn't exactly one of the better teams in the league either, But to see them bounce back from such a devastating loss to put up the numbers they did against the Jackets was encouraging.
Yeah, and if you remember in this game, they went down 2-1 in the second period. Fantilli, that kid, I know Bedard got all the attention, but my God. That kid, talented. He'll be talented, obviously, for quite some time. He's not going to lose that skill. But the Islanders go down 2-1. They get dominated in their own zone. It seemed like 5 minutes to just turnover, like 4 or 5 defensive zone turnovers. And then out of nowhere, Fasching finds Clutterbuck in the low slot. Clutterbuck scores. And somehow this game's tied.
Right.
Tied at 2. Again, the Islanders had nothing going. And then a block shot.
Well, they scored, 3 goals in the last 5.5 in the second period?
Barzal gets a gift from the hockey gods, what he said after the game. On a deflected shot, he catches it, scores. Him and Bo Horvat were just phenomenal that game. And the Islanders run a power play goal. They're probably their most beautiful power play goal of the year. Barzal to Nelson to Palmieri, tic-tac-toe. And after the game, I went up to Palmieri and I said, how important was it for you guys to hold this lead after what happened? He goes, not to nitpick at your question, we didn't just hold the lead, we poured it on. And I think, again, I asked a lot of the guys too, I said, is this an example of your best defense can be an offense? Like, push. And they said, yeah. If we play on the attack in the third periods, obviously that's less time in our own zone, the forechecking helps, things like that. And that's one of those wins where, okay, you got to build on it. And we knew that they were going to play a tough LA Kings team, and you could bring us into the LA game there.
Yeah, so LA game, scoreless through the first period. They get into the second frame, and then finally the Kings open it up. They go up 2-0. And against a tough team like that, they're riding in, 11 straight wins in the road. They're going for a record there for 12. They were also, I think, going for a franchise record of shutout hockey. I think they were up to 136 minutes or something like that. So it was a big night for the Kings if they wanted to, smash some numbers and all that. And one of the better teams in the league out west this year. So you go down 2-0 to those guys, and with the way the Islanders have been playing in third periods, you're probably not too encouraged with how that game's going to get sorted. But Anders Lee ends up scoring 2 big goals, ties the game, and then obviously the huge winner from JGP in overtime. And it has to be the biggest win of the season for this team after that Florida game.
Oh, and they spoke about it. I mean, that's one of those, that's a win that you go, that could turn the season around. That was the Islanders' first comeback win of the season.
Right.
In terms of everything, Sorokin's first overtime win of the year. He didn't play great in this one. The 2 goals the Kings did score, one of them which was challenged for goaltender interference, but Sorokin initiated the contact, didn't understand the challenge, asked Lambert. I asked Lambert, I said, what did you guys see? He said, we saw some contact. Now, at that point of the game, you lose that challenge. After allowing a goal, you go on the kill. The Islanders do kill it off. So
if they scored on that power play afterwards, the game was over.
Game was over, but a resilient effort, and then in overtime, Pajot gets his first overtime winner as an Islander, second fastest in franchise history to laugh. That was, what was it, 12 seconds in?
10 seconds for LaFontaine. Pajot was 13.
13. So then you look at that whole play in overtime, and I just want to, I have a couple of takeaways from this game. First off, the third line for the Islanders was pretty non-existent in regulation. You just weren't noticing them. And Lambert goes to them to start OT.
Right.
And so kudos to them getting Lambert trusting that. Pajot and Holmstrom obviously have had chemistry on the penalty kill, things like that. But this is the second time in overtime. The Islanders have 2 overtime wins that Dobson made a defensive play that led to a goal. So you go back to that win in Carolina. He makes that defensive zone play where he slides to block a pass, gets up the ice, makes the pass with Barzal. They win. Last night, Kempe is coming in. It's essentially a one-on-one situation. Dobson gets a stick on the shot, but also brushes Kempe, makes him go around him. Holmstrom gets the puck off the boards. Pajot said it was a hell of a read. Then Pajot does the Cizikas, which is what he said. He saw Cizikas do this. Instead of shooting on the breakaway, he cuts to the back and goes 5-0, scores the game winner. But again, 2 overtime wins, 2 situations where Dobson made a defensive play first that went to the game winner.
Yeah, no, it was a huge win, and like you said, first comeback, and that used to be something they were more specialists at last season. So it was nice to see them not only, get their first comeback win here, but kind of turn things around, because as we've noted, the third period has been rather devastating for this team. But now that's 2 straight games now with a very positive third period, and maybe this is something that can kind of turn the tide. And I guess, looking at the Columbus game, when, games coming down the road here and they end up with more leads going into the third period, is that something they're going to key on more, going for that kill, trying to get the extra goal or 2 instead of, dialing it back into a shell and just trying to protect leads, which obviously hasn't worked for them.
Yeah, I actually asked Anders Lee this. I said, with your back end so, broken right now, just in terms of injury, I said, how important is it that you guys push more offensively just to take pressure off them? And he said every night they want to be providing the offense. They want to be pushing and forechecking hard. But he goes, yeah, it's incredibly important because we've got to take some pressure off them. You got guys back there that are going to be playing a lot of minutes depending on how long people are out. And I think they have no choice. I think they have to do that. Take the pressure off your goal, and they show that they have the ability to do that. Again, we talked about it last year, is that maybe they didn't in the first half, they didn't have the offense to get those 3 or 4 extra goals and then hold the lead. Again, they're going into this defensive shell for the team that's defensive structures failed them all year. So you can't rely on your defense to win anymore, but they don't have to. That's the thing here. They do not have to do that anymore. And you saw that in the Columbus game. You saw last night, they played solid defensively, and they got the goals when they needed. They didn't obviously run it up, but they got goals when they needed to get them. They were greasy goals, but goal's a goal. And just going back to other few things in this game, just want to get to is we saw Mayfield fight. We also saw Barzal get absolutely wrecked
yes, we
by
did.
Englund. It was a pass a little behind him. His head was down. He gets rocked. But the biggest thing here is, Mayfield fights him, but Horvat throws a glove off.
Right.
This is a guy that's not a fighter. Would he fight? Clearly he would. That was willing to stand up for a teammate against a much bigger guy. And I asked Barzal after the game what that meant to him to see not just one teammate, but 2. Go for it.
Jump the gun.
No, that was, him and Maisie just going in like that. He was right behind him. Just shows what kind of locker room we are. So I appreciated it. Obviously, it means a lot to me. And then the guys, on the bench too. So stuff like that sometimes, obviously they scored on that PK actually. But, someone was looking down. So, and saw us that we got to carry it to the locker room. So, yeah, it means a lot.
So you talked about the penalty, and the penalty kill after that is somehow Mayfield got an unsportsmanlike penalty for jumping in the place of Horvat, so the Islanders then have to go on the kill. They don't kill it off, but I think it's, again, they win the game, so you're not too worried about that there. But, this was an issue last year where Islanders got hurt time and time again or got hit hard, and you just saw nobody standing up. And again, for what Horvat's done offensively, to the leadership he's shown in the room and things like that, to do that obviously has to mean a lot to Barzal there. Other plays from this game is, we've talked about Sorokin a lot this year, and I've been pretty consistent saying that he's made game-saving saves, but not at game-saving moments.
Right.
Last night with 2:27 to go in the third, Kempe gets on a breakaway.
Yeah, that was a huge
and he
one.
makes the save. And that wins them the game, because if they allow a goal there, which...
It was about 2 minutes and change left in the game at that point.
If that goes in, you don't blame Sorokin for that, but it's like...
Right.
Another game where you didn't get that big save you needed, and that's again why he's getting paid the big bucks and stuff, is to make that save, and he gets that done. The last point is that Bortuzzo played with Bolduc last night. Obviously, Bortuzzo's first game as an Islander. We'll get to some injury stuff in a sec, but he brought stability, physical, blocking shots. But I think the biggest thing was after the game, he spoke about it too, is late in the third period that duo was out there.
Yeah.
And forget what you want to say about the advanced statistics where maybe they were terrible in the game last night, is Lambert trusted in that moment. Or a player that just came here, he's trusting in late game. And a guy like Bolduc, who's been playing much better over the last 4. So I think that's an encouraging sign that Lambert showed the trust in them late, and also that, they weren't out there for a goal against.
What do you think the decision-making process was there for him to go with that pairing? Because especially, just like you said, Bolduc obviously has been struggling, although he has looked better. I thought he looked really solid in the game against the Sharks, even in the losing effort. But I think he's been coming along a little bit. But obviously, with the way he's been playing this season, and a guy that just showed up to have them play late in the game, I just wonder what Lambert's thought process was there.
Now,
just give guys like Dobson.
I was going to say there is probably who just came off the ice, things like that. But I guess even if it wasn't, on purpose, we want them in the final minute, that they were out there and they got the job done. And Bortuzzo said afterwards that, we clearly had a little bit of trust there, and that's huge coming into a new locker room to get that trust right off the bat. So, again, Bortuzzo didn't have to be a Norris guy for this Islanders team, just to be a stable presence back there. Don't stand out for the wrong reasons, and I thought his first game he played pretty solid.
Yeah, for him to come in on short notice, have a solid game like that, and I guess a little hat tip to Lou Lamoriello, too, for addressing a need. I mean, the defense is already depleted with Pelech and Aho being out. Yeah, Pulick go down now, and I mean, he pretty much had no choice but to try to bring somebody in, and to bring a guy like Bortuzzo in, Stanley Cup winner, veteran, 6'4" guy, crease clear. So I think that was a good move on Lou's end, too, for a 7th-round pick.
And again, too, losing Pulick, it kind of worked out the same timing as the Riley thing, where the Blues have been trying to move Bortuzzo. He only played, I think, a couple of games this year.
Yeah, it's weird. Same situation. Barely got in any games. Yeah. It looked like he was an extra guy they could just get rid of.
But with Pulick out, you needed a penalty killer.
Right.
And it just, for a 7th-round pick in 2024. Then again, the Islanders maybe have drafted later, some players later in rounds. We'll see how those guys pan out. But It's a no-brainer move for Lou to make. He still has room to add people with the cap, with Pelech being on long-term IR. But, yeah, I think, again, him being a penalty killer is huge. He has obviously won a cup before. He knows Letty and Grice. Letty and Grice said the first thing they said to him was, buy a razor. Boychuk dropped off the razor and the shaving cream. Because, again, Bortuzzo had the full-on beard.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he'll fit in well. I know he's had issues. He's the one that injured Pelech last year. He's the one a couple years ago that decided to take cross-check after cross-check to Nelson's neck while Nelson on the ice, but water under the bridge. Yeah, I mean, again, I talked to Riley about that, too. I said, when you're coming to a new team, because he played against the Islanders in that playoff, said, how do you guys, settle old beef? And he goes, really, if it's happening in a game and it's a heated moment, it's usually fine, unless it's a guy that repeatedly, like a Tom Wilson or someone that does that. And he goes, this room especially, he came in here, they joked about stuff that happened during the Boston Bruins series. Everyone wants to win. That's at the end of the day. Obviously, couldn't ask Pelech about it because he's on long-term IR.
Right.
I don't think there's anything. Again, that last year, that was a hit where Pelech's falling and things like that. But if Bortuzzo helps the team win, they'll be fine.
Yeah, there's not going to be issues there. So, nice little week for the Islanders. 2-0-1, 4-0-1 in their last 5. They have yet to lose a game in regulation in December. So, a nice little start to the last month of the year. And we'll get into what's on tap a little bit later. But the scheduling here, they wrap up a 6-game homestand with 3 games coming this week that also are going to be a little bit tough for them. But we'll talk about those. But what I did want to get into is something you hinted at before. Little injury update. Why don't we talk about Pelech, Aho, now Pulock, and what it means for the back end?
All right, so start with Pulock. So he got hurt. He blocked his shot in the second period against the Blue Jackets. It was Zach Rowensky. Oh, wow. Oh, that's a big one. Off the right ankle. And he stayed down for a second, got up, never left the game. Played a couple of shifts in the third period, but then left with 8:14 to go in the third. Didn't return. They were up 5-3 at that point, I believe. So everyone was like, oh, you know what? He's probably banged up. He'll be fine.
Right.
And then next day, he goes on IR. And then about 30 minutes later, Bortuzzo is brought in. There's no update on Pulock's status. It's just IR, which means I think he could be activated out of that game, out of IR against the Boston Bruins. That's his first game back, so he'll miss a couple here. Come back at the end of the week if he's ready. With Sebastian Aho, he skated the last 4 or 5 days with the team. Mm-hmm. He's taken line rushes with Hutton as your extra pairing there. Mm-hmm. He doesn't look limited at all. I think he'll get back in at some point this week, maybe as soon as tomorrow. Who knows? We'll find out. But his was an upper body injury. We never got told exactly what it was, but he seems like he's very close. And then with Pelech, he's resumed skating, and he could be activated December 19th, but it's a lower body injury for him. So, it's an upper body injury for him. So the fact that he's skating, I don't know how much that means, because I think the biggest news in that is they're comfortable with him being on the ice. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, it looked like he was holding his wrist. So maybe they were nervous if he falls or if anything happens during a practice, but it's all positive that he's skating again. We just have no idea when he'll be ready to go. I feel like December, if it is a broken wrist and he needed surgery or not, I feel like December 19th isn't going to be a realistic date for him. Mm. But we'll see.
We shall see, but there will eventually be a logjam on the defensive end of things, assuming nobody else goes down. So I guess the question will eventually be, what does this team do with the guys they have back there?
I guess the first thing would be Aho returning. What do you do? Now, I think a lot...
Balduke or Riley, right?
Right now, I don't think you could take Riley out of this lineup. I think what Riley's been able to do is just show that he has this offensive mindset and this ability to escape situations. Mm-hmm. Now, has he made defensive miscues? 100%. He's getting used to a new system and things like that. Right. But he's mobile. He jumps in on the rush. He pinches. He does all those things where it's like a Letty. They're best friends, by the way. But it is like watching Nick Letty out there. Not the exact same player, but he's got a strong shot. He's a smart player. I just think what he's doing right now for the back end in terms of just helping the rush and transition game, you can't take him out. And I think Bolduc's taking strides as well. I think the biggest question, because Aho could play both sides, is how does Bortuzzo look going forward?
Right.
Now, I don't know if Aho's going to be ready to go against the Leafs on Monday, but let's say he's not. So it's another game for Bortuzzo against a pretty tough team. Then you kind of see, okay, who's it's going to be a game, not game by game, but if Bolduc has a bad game, Bolduc probably comes out.
Right.
And I feel like that's the most realistic option. But I think right now Riley's been an upgrade over Aho because they play a similar game in terms of just speed. I just think Riley brings more. And then I think it just comes down to Bortuzzo still a stable guy against tough competition, even though LA Kings are very tough.
Right.
I could see Bolduc being the one to come out, but I can't see Riley coming out.
Yeah, I guess we'll tackle that issue when it comes about. But I have to agree with you on Riley. He's got 4 points already since coming over. He's
3-game point streak.
Every game he seems to look much more comfortable. So, it's going to be tough to pull a guy like him out when somebody like Aho comes in. But, I mean, that's encouraging because, Pellick and Pullock have been the foundation of that defense now for a very long time. And having them both out at the same time, makes you concerned already with just one guy going out. Now with both of them going out, and for these guys to come and fill in and be able to, so far, at least, pad them a little bit and give them a chance to win is encouraging. And hopefully that continues going forward.
I think if there's one positive with all these injuries is that Romanov and Dobson found themselves back together again after what happened last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they've looked very good.
Yeah.
Not perfect, and Romanov certainly had his struggles, and we know what Dobson's doing this year is just ridiculous, and confidence is such a huge thing. But as a pairing right now, they've played 5 games together, 82 minutes, 53 seconds, 4 goals for, 2 goals against. And again, could be a pairing for a very long time.
Well, that was the whole idea.
Yeah, and it didn't work last year, and I think we talked about it. Romanov in a brand new system where he was pinching a lot, throwing hits at the inopportune times. Mm-hmm. Then Dobson, who maybe needed one more year with a vet. And now you're showing, Dobson clearly doesn't need that anymore, as he's showing. And Romanov, his hits are down, and I asked him about it, and I talked to Lambert about this too. His hits are down, I think, over 50%. Mm-hmm. And Lambert said it's because he's not throwing hits he's not leaving his position to make plays. Now, he's still making defensive mistakes for sure. We've talked about it, but the hits are down because he's not just going and lay a hit. When it's a time to make a hit, he's making the hit.
Right.
But he's staying more compact positionally, and that's obviously huge because that was the biggest issue last year is Romanov would step at the blue line to try to lay a hit, miss, and Dobson's already in the neutral zone. So at that point, it's a 2-on-0 or 1-on-0 breakaway going against Sorokin or Varlamov, and they couldn't have that, which is why Lambert ended up switching those groups really early, I think 5 or 6 games in last year. But this year, they look much stronger together.
No, it's a really good sign, and if that's something that can continue, then all of a sudden you're feeling a lot better about this defense, especially with the way the D has been, in the early parts of the season. So if they can continue that, maybe they get a couple more wins and close out a couple more games in the third period, and we're talking more about playoffs as the season goes on. But last week, we had talked about just, it was a solid week prior, and they start to get a couple of wins, and we're like, hey, is this team turning it around? And I said, I'm not ready to say that yet. They haven't turned the corner yet. Like, we need to see more. And obviously, we saw a little bit more of that this past week. Obviously, didn't start out well, blowing the game against the Sharks. You get the win against Columbus. You get a huge win against a tough team in the Kings. I mean, look, now you group these 2 weeks together, and all of a sudden, that's a nice patch of games. That's a nice patch of points, nice patch of wins. They're in the playoff mix. I mean, they were in third place going into tonight, depends on some results tonight. But, I mean, look, they're in the mix now in the playoffs. Is this a team that's finally finding its stride, or do we still need to see more?
I feel like you'll never get that answer in terms of are they a playoff team or not until game 82, because they had a great game against the Kings where they came back.
Yeah.
Now they play a very good Toronto team. So is it about, okay, well, the Islanders lose that game, but the way they lost, is that saying, maybe they lose the game 2-1, but they held the Leafs to 2 goals or things like that? Is that a good loss? I think that's
right.
That's kind of how you have to measure it, because you could look at this week and say they could have gone undefeated this week.
Yeah.
The same way the week before that, blowing to Jersey. And now you probably feel a little better if they 6-0.
Well, it's funny because I was looking at the standings, and I was looking at now they're 6 points behind the Rangers. And if you just took 6 of the Islanders' overtime / shootout losses and put them in the win column, they'd be right there with them. The Rangers have played 1 less game, but if they really were just able to close out some of those games, they'd be neck and neck with the Rangers for first place in the division, which is crazy to think about. But it also kind of shows you just how close they are, too.
Oh, for sure. They're 20 minutes away.
6 points is 3 wins over the course of 50-something games. That's a lot of time to make up that ground. And again, this is, I guess, the question we're going to keep asking. Are they going to figure out their third periods? Have they figured out their third periods? That's really what it's going to be. And this is, again, under the assumption that they continue to start out well, which is what they've been doing over the majority of their games. So if they can do that, then yeah, maybe they are a better team than we thought. And it's so funny how, this is how we're speaking about this team, where you rewind 2 weeks ago and we're talking about Lane Lambert potentially getting fired, and whether a guy like Kevin Hines might be coming in. And, I guess if it keeps going this way, when does Lane Lambert get the Lindy Ruff treatment, right? And he gets the apology.
When they win 10 in a row.
Right. Oh, yeah, we're not there. I'm not saying we're there. I'm not saying the man deserves an apology yet, but look, we're starting to see encouraging signs now, and if it keeps going this route, then all of a sudden you might say maybe Lane's not the problem.
The final piece of the puzzle was the third period. The power play, again, top 10 power play. The offense, Jake the Snake, what was the stat you had? As you look that, I'll keep going here. But I threw it under the spot there. But the power play is going. They're 5-on-5. They're providing goals 5-on-5. The biggest final piece was that third period. The last 2 games, the penalty kill has been pretty good lately.
Yeah, it's coming back. It's coming back.
Yeah, so over the last 10 games, the Islanders have the most goals scored in the East.
Over the last 10 games, the Islanders have the most goals scored in the East, and they're ahead of the teams like the Oilers and the elite teams in this league, and that's a positive. Again, you have to keep the puck out of your net.
When was the last time the Islanders had the most goals scored in the East over a 10-game period? You might have to go back to the 80s for something.
Yeah, when they got free chili.
Or maybe the Dougie Wade season. You know?
Yeah, that's very true.
Because they did score a lot of goals that year.
But they're just fine. You have to find a way to close games out, because you talked about it too. Is if they just had those points and they win, and now this is the big question: is can they make up the points they already lost this year to those teams like now you got to steal some.
Right.
Like I think against the Kings,
you got to close some games out now.
Yeah, I don't think it's a steal against the Kings. They had to come back and win it, and that's definitely helps mitigate one of those losses. But go and beat the Leafs. You play the Bruins later in the week. Find a way to get a point or beat the Bruins. You can't just rely on beating up on these worst teams and showing the offense that way. It matters against these elite teams.
And going back to looking at the standings, I was just comparing this season to last season. So they're a point back of the same pace of last season, right? I think they had one more point now going back here than they have right now. And the big difference with the last season, this season is the issue was, so the issue this season has been obviously blowing the leads and coughing up that second point, right? Last year, they didn't have any overtime or shootout losses up until this point.
Right, yeah.
They had 10 regulation losses, and I remember saying it on the show last year, they just have to find a way to lose good. Like they were losing all 10 of those games, but they weren't able to get to that extra frame. And the funny thing is, you could say on paper with the points, they're losing better this year, but I mean, they're losing in the most awful fashion imaginable, but they're pulling points out of these games.
Yeah, and that's huge. And I think last year too I think I tweeted this out, is that the offense is almost exact. Whatever, not in counting this game against the Kings, leading up to that game, the offense was the exact it was through 25 games last year, whatever it was. And again, they fell off in January and had that horrific January. They went into trot-style hockey because they had to. And everyone's saying, well, what's going to change this year? Like, this offense, because of how deep it is this year and because of how Horvat and Barzal are playing, and now Lee's on pace for over 20 goals and Holmstrom's on pace for 20. Like, this offense is definitely more sustainable than it was a year ago because the Islanders won't have to go into that defensive shell. They had to last year. And now you can't rely on this defense the way you did. They're clearly showing that the results are going to come, especially in third periods and holding leads, when they push for offense. So for me, this team is more suited to be consistent offensively than it was a year ago. And that's huge because, again, the numbers last year were great offensively until the end of December. And then they just stopped being an offensive. They just obviously got cold, and then they just
buy a goal in January.
Couldn't buy a goal. So I think right now, again, they have to prove it, but this offense is different than it was last year. Plus the power play, that's huge too.
Look, you got Barzal at over a point pace. You got Horvat a point under a point per game pace. So obviously, things are looking up there, and you alluded to it before. They're getting more scoring throughout the lineup with the Palmieri's. A guy when he's healthy, that's obviously helpful.
Scoring.
Engvall's putting up. I think he has 4 goals now. Yeah.
So Julian Gautier's a snipe.
Holmstrom. Yeah. So they're picking it up. So they're playing by committee here, but they're finally a little top heavy where you got 2 guys in the Islanders right now who are playing at a point per game pace. Like, that's kind of unheard of with recent New York Islander squads, right? So, and you still have Nelson there too. So I mean, it's definitely been interesting watching them this season. It's been a very weird season. I've said it more than once, and they're still kind of finding their way. But it's been more good than bad, I guess, because of where they are in the standings.
That's all that matters, right? At the end of the day, we could talk about every player, every stat, but when 82 games are up, all that matters if the Islanders are in or not. I know fans will, what's the point of getting in and then losing in the first round?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. That's definitely possible for every team. I don't think Boston Bruins fans didn't say, they're in the playoffs last year, and that was good enough that they lost in the first round. So you never know. That's why we love this sport. But for the Islanders right now, if they start closing out third periods, they're not going to need 82 games to make the playoffs. They'll be a top 3 team in the Metro. That's just the question is, can they be consistent enough when it matters to be safe come March? And because, again, Barzal last year at his end of the year presser, and we definitely talked about it, said he is tired of having to grind in the final couple of months just to get in. He said the points early in the year are the ones that are important. Now, obviously, the Islanders didn't listen to him, him included, that they blew a lot of points and gave a lot of points away early on, but it's not too late to make those up before December 31st and then go into January. They could have a very strong January or even an average January. This division isn't showing to be a top 3 elite teams running away with it. Like the Rangers were on fire, and the Islanders, what you say, 5 points, 6 points back right now. So right now is the time for the Islanders to get the points and not have to worry. But again, it's an 82-game season.
Indeed, we'll see what happens, but we got a break for Nick Alberga. But before we do, I want to tell you all about Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun, and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. And with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train rolls on here at Hockey Night in New York. And joining us right now is Nick Alberga, host of Maple Leafs Morning Take. Nick, thanks so much for joining us, man. How you doing, bud?
My pleasure, guys. I'm doing well. How are you on this Sunday?
Doing all right. Obviously talking a lot of Islander hockey here, but we want to talk some Leafs hockey with you. They are 7-1-2 in their last 10, currently third in the Atlantic Division. What kind of season have the Leafs had so far this year?
Pretty incredible. You start this interview and don't bring up the name John Tavares. I'm really
really
impressed, guys.
Give us a few. We're easing you into it.
We're just what's up, man?
It's in the notes. It's coming.
Not even like an Ohtani rib, just like right into it.
It's all in the
to
notes,
answer your
pal.
question, it's been a turbulent start for this Maple Leafs team. It's kind of been really interesting to see what their record's at, and maybe just an indictment in how talented they are, because I don't think by any stretch they've been very great this season, and still somehow, some way, as you referenced, they have like 14 wins on the season. But I would call them a work in progress through the first 25 some odd games of this season. I'm intrigued to see how this week goes for them.
Right on. And you have Nylander leading the charge right now. He's in a contract year. You think this guy's looking to make some money here, or is this this the season you expected out of him?
Oh, 1,000%. It's a bit of that, but it's also like people sort of lose sight of the fact that he scored 40 goals last year. Like he's a hell of a player, man. Like he's having another great year, and I think he's worth every penny. I would never slam any player for chasing the dollars. And from everything we've learned about his father too, I don't think it's gonna be a contract that isn't up to snuff for the Nylander family and his agent and all that. And I think he deserves it. I think he's been excellent, but I'm very curious to see where that whole situation goes over the next couple of months, of course, leading up to the trade deadline.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you think that's a contract the Leafs are going to be able to fit under the cap next season and going forward.
Well, it seems to be the big question around the hockey world. I think where there's a will, where there's a way. I mean, pardon the pun, obviously, but I think with the cap going up, there's a lot of free agents on this roster pending UFAs. I think if they wanted to keep Nylander, I think they could easily do it. Obviously, I think there'd have to be a lot of moving parts, and there would have to be some players they brought in that they're not going to re-sign. Like, I think the smart thing they did in the offseason was bring in plenty full of guys who are one-year deals. So, like, it gives them opportunity and ability to tinker a bit here, knowing the Nylander conversation's coming up, and so is the one with John Tavares and Mitch Marner this summer.
Yeah, we're going to see a $700 million deal handed out.
Probably not, guys. I won't lie. It's been a very emotional weekend. I've taken a step away from Twitter in the last 24 hours. I've just been trying to figure out this world we live in, where it's like we, as a fan base, felt that Shohei Ohtani was about to become a Blue Jay, and then he goes to the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't blame him. I think it would feel pretty damn good. First and foremost, you got like a 2-3-4 with Betts and Freeman and everything else they have on that roster, and obviously the locale and all that, but it stings a bit. I think you guys know that feeling, don't you?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Nick.
Well, I did want to.
When Jason Blake left the Islanders.
That's exactly what we thought you were talking about. But were there bed sheets discovered on Ohtani or what here?
No.
I thought I saw a picture of Shohei Ohtani wearing Blue Jays bed sheets, but it sounded like it was a Photoshop, unfortunately.
That's too
I wonder
bad.
who they used to Photoshop that picture. But speaking of John Tavares, because you opened that up with him, I see all the talk all the time about he's been good for the Leafs. He hasn't been great. You know, so far with him being on the Maple Leafs, what is your overall thoughts just as his production with this team?
I think it's pretty much as advertised. I mean, I should preface by saying I've covered John Tavares back to his days in junior hockey. I covered him when he was a London Knight for like 25 games, and that was so weird to see, considering he was an Oshawa General, then gets dealt. And my buddy was on the team, so I got to really, really watch closely JTB, a member of the London Knights, but I think he's come as advertised. I mean, you really can't put it on the player for signing that type of contract. I don't think he gave them a discount by any stretch, but I think in terms of production, it's pretty much everything you saw with the New York Islanders he's brought from a captaincy point of view, a production standpoint, weathering the storm. Like, I think he's been such a good shill for the likes of like Matthews and Nylander and Marner. So I think he's held up his end of the bargain. I just think the unfortunate thing, which is weird to say, it's not every day where a John Tavares sort of falls in your lap if you're the Maple Leafs. And I think looking back at it, I mean, would they make the same decision? I mean, it's hard to say and talk in retrospect, but probably not, considering some of the other contracts they had to hand out, you know?
Was it surprising that they gave him the C coming in as the new guy?
No, I would have to think that was probably negotiated into that contract. I'm a bit stunned, however, like it hasn't Like, not that JT's that type of guy, not that anybody's going to be that guy, but I wonder if that day comes. Maybe it's in the the offseason coming up. The Leafs finally can't get over that hump if he slides things over to Austin Matthews. Like, I think teams have only so many trump cards to use when they keep failing and failing and failing when it matters most in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I wonder if they use that a la like what the San Jose Sharks did back in the day. But no, I wasn't stunned. I mean, you're coming in for that type of contract. You're leaving the way you did Long Island. Like, I think obviously it's got to make sense, and you've got to wear that C, and he's worn the captaincy pretty much his entire life, right?
Right, and so he's obviously guaranteed to hit his 1,000th point tomorrow night against the Islanders. I mean, that is obviously going to happen. Do you happen to know how he plans to celebrate?
Oh, man, I don't know. Maybe he goes to the Coliseum for an old tour or something like that. But I don't know. Like, I was doing some research for my show tomorrow, and funny enough, I brought up Jason Blake because Jason Blake's coming on the show, and I jokingly, putting some questions together for Jason tomorrow. I was like, well, he walked before so John Tavares could run, right? He's the first guy who left, but granted, coming off a 40-goal season, and he was paid probably a bit too much. No, he was paid a bit too much, and that's probably why he left the Islanders. But I think from the JT perspective, I don't think he's looked great against the New York Islanders. I mean, anybody who deals with that type of ridicule on a nightly basis from a team that you left years ago, I mean, there's a lot of pressure that goes into that. And from what I remember, it's been a mixed bag. I think in 11 games, the Leafs are 6-4-1 against the New York Islanders. So it would be a great story, I think, from a Toronto perspective if it happens. But I'm not sure. It depends on how the fans are feeling on Monday night.
And Nick, with goaltending, that's always a talk of the town with the Leafs as well. I know Wall's hurt, right? So how has the goaltending been? And I guess who's the answer? Is it Samsonov, a guy that could just carry it?
It's just so fascinating, and you guys know this, like especially covering that team. Like, defense is everything, and that's been a big story with this Leafs team so far this season. Like, defensively, they've been an absolute train wreck. Now, obviously, Kyle Dubas leaves; he goes to Pittsburgh. They bring in Brad Treliving, and they bring in some guys. Their numbers don't check out as much as the previous administration. Guys like Ryan Reeves, and there's some guys who have struggled early on. But it is a pretty big moment in the season because Joseph Woll, as you mentioned, is week to week with a high ankle sprain. And then Ilya Samsonov comes out on Saturday, posts that 18-save shutout. I think they hit a couple posts, did the Predators a crossbar too. Like, good to be lucky, lucky to be good. That's the old saying, of course. And I think, this is the reason why they signed Martin Jones for a bit of insurance. So he's going to back up, presumably, Ilya Samsonov, I would think, is going to get the start. Especially given he got a shutout against the Nashville Predators. But the Leafs are a work in progress defensively. And I think, as you guys have seen specifically with that team and many teams across the NHL, you're only as good as your D. I mean, the position has become so volatile on a yearly basis. I mean, just look at the struggles of like an Ilya Sorokin this year. You just don't know what you're going to get, unfortunately, on a yearly basis. And, Joseph Woll has been a great story, but Ilya Samsonov has not been great, and maybe he can build upon the shutout he got against Nashville.
For sure. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the new blood that's coming here, Toronto. Domi, Reeves, Bertuzzi, how those guys slotted, and you lost Klingberg to hip surgery. How those guys played so far?
I want to talk about my shirt, man. I wore this Islander shirt for you guys from Yes Man Outfitters, my boys out there. Sorokin, the Whale. They still call him the Whale out there?
Couldn't even see it behind the microphone, but now that you pointed out, yes.
I'm on brand. I'm a bit of a troll, I think, when it comes to Islanders fans.
You don't think?
Yeah, a bit. No, we're friends now. But thank you for John Tavares.
So they're your second favorite team now?
Pardon me?
They're your second favorite team now?
I don't know. Anybody who knows me, I just watch hockey. Honestly, it's tough to say, but I could not care who wins any game anymore. I have bills to pay. But to answer your question, it's a different approach that they've taken to this Maple Leafs roster, guys. And granted, I mean, I think you can draw some similarities to the Florida Panthers and sort of bringing in some sandpaper and some grit and seeing how it works in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I truly don't think we'll get an accurate, feel or sense of if this Leafs team is any different until the Stanley Cup playoffs when the games start for real. I mean, assuming the Leafs get there, which they should, given the talent on that roster. But I don't think you could really make a proclamation. I know people wanted to jump on Ryan Reeves 5 games in. Max Domi struggled. Tyler Bertuzzi. The Klingberg signing from the beginning was a head scratcher, and he's played his last game as a Maple Leaf. He's done for the year with a hip surgery, right? So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make some good decisions as well as GM. I mean, it's all part of the job, but I think it's been a mixed bag so far, but like to answer your question, I probably can't make a full analysis until playoff time to see what these guys are really worth for this team.
No, I think that's a fair point, but I also think it's an important one to expand on here because, look, I mean, the Maple Leafs have been a regular season darling now for how long, right? We all know they get into the playoffs, and until recently they couldn't get out of the first round. That hasn't made us too upset here on Long Island. But look, I mean, is there anything that you're seeing 20-something games in here where, okay, maybe this year is different. Maybe this is finally a Leafs team that can, go deep into the playoffs, get to a conference final. I mean, you have all that firepower up front. I mean, the goals come in spades with this team. Why haven't they been able to get over the hump? And is there anything encouraging you to think, okay, this could be a year it happens?
It's just really weird because like it took them so long to win a playoff series, then they finally beat Tampa, and then like they were zapped of their confidence because they got goalied by Bobrovsky in the first game and a half against the Florida Panthers, and then Game 3, I remember it vividly. I was actually in Vegas watching it on a Sunday afternoon. The Leafs no-showed for a game down 2-0 in that series. I just think it's so hard to quantify. Like, again, and my coach Jay Rosa always gives me flack. I'm like, the regular season does not matter for this team. I mean, every year I think it's fair to assume the Leafs are going to be in the playoffs.
Right.
It's more so like, are they going to be a different team come playoff time? So I know I'm sort of weaseling away from your question, but like, I have no clue, man. They can go like 17-0 in 17 straight games, and I would still have my questions about the playoffs. And that's pretty much the sense of the fan base. Like, I mean, Austin Matthews has 18 goals. Nylander's played like a rock star. Morgan Riley's been great. Marner's had his ups and downs. JT's been pretty decent, but like people here do not care about the personal accolades anymore. Like they honestly don't. I think it's all about the postseason. And unfortunately, nobody has an answer if this team is going to be any different. Like the resolve I don't know. There's just so many moving parts come playoff time. And you guys are a perfect example of that. Like the Islanders are a team that never has I think the talent on paper to compete with the juggernauts in this league, and they always seem to do so, right?
Right.
Yeah, and Nick, talking about the Islanders, what is your outside view of this team right now?
My view is that it's been the same view since I think JT left. Like they, Matt Barzal, like get the guy some help. Like, and that's the tough part about covering Lou Lamoriello. You just have no clue. Like you're thinking Patrick Laine, and he's like, here's Robert Bortuzzo. It's like, congratulations, another grinding defenseman to play the brand. Like the guy had to shave his beard. Like I think it's a definition of insanity. I mean, not to besmirch the great name of Lou Lamoriello, but I wonder if time has passed him by a bit. I mean, you look back at his track record with the Leafs. Yeah, he made some good decisions. There was also some pretty bad decisions too. And I just look at that Islanders roster. I know they want to play a certain brand, but it would really help if Oliver Wahlstrom could ever live up to expectation, but B, like, let's get some guys going with Nelson and obviously Barzal, and Anders Lee's had an up and down start. Like they need a bona fide stud type player, a sniper, like a designated sniper shooter. And maybe it's easier said than done. Maybe it's hard to get these guys over in free agency, but I just feel like they have too many of the same type of player. You need that hired gun, and they're still looking for it, unfortunately.
And what are your thoughts on Bo Horvat? Him and Barzal right now have been on fire, but I get what you're saying about needing that third guy, but what do you think about Horvat?
Oh, I think he's great. Like, I think he's a good fit too. Like, he's a Lou Lamoriello type. Like, as soon as they picked him up, it's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I get there's a certain brand, there's a certain style, but when push comes to shove in the Stanley Cup playoffs, man, you need that big time goal. Like I get it. Like you can go to Grindtown, which this team has done, and squeak out 2-1 victories. And granted, they have the goaltending, obviously, with even the season like Varlamov's having, but obviously with Ilya Sorokin, a top 3 goaltender in the league, that certainly helps. But like, I rather take my chances and have, again, a hired gun, a guy who's a sniper in this league who could finish and produce, and take my chances. I just think in general, they need more of that type of player. Like they're a team that's got a bunch of the same style of players, if that makes sense.
And you're a fantasy guy. How high is the stock on Noah Dobson right now?
Oh, it's huge. Like we talked about him going into this season, right? He was up and down last year. 2 years back, he was incredible. And the turbulency does happen with young defensemen. I mean, him being Canadian, and I could tell you a thing or two about him and his, where he came from, obviously his junior development. And I think he's well on his way to being an elite defenseman in this league. So am I really shocked? Probably not. I do think it's sustainable. I think it would certainly, again, help a guy like Dobson too, if they got in a guy who can score as well. Like, just help everybody out. Like, I think at times the Islanders are just guilty of being very top heavy in terms of, there's a couple guys, like if they don't beat you, you're probably not winning. And I think across the board, you need guys like Pajot and others. Like if it's going to be like a scoring by committee type team, you need all these guys going or you're going to be in trouble. And I think that's what we saw early on. Like it seems like they're finding their way and they're starting to score some goals lately. But again, there are some question marks with that team too.
Well, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show here tonight, man. Awesome stuff. Sorry about Ohtani, but congratulations on Tavares hitting 1,000 points tomorrow night.
We'll see if it happens. Thanks for having me. And I love the bagels, boys. You guys just bring it. Got the bagels a couple of years ago. Got a lot of bagels, some great cream cheese. So enjoy the game tomorrow night. And I do really appreciate the passion of that fan base. I think it's been about 25 years since John Tavares left, and they still hate him.
Have you been in the building yet? Have you been in UBS?
No, and Rosner will know. I know some people connected to the organization. I just have not made it down there. Like I really, really need to go down there and watch a hockey game. But I told Kevin Conley, if you bring me to a game, I will go to a game, and I want Chloe Grace Moretz there too, please.
Okay, we'll see what we can do over there, over here for you. But Nick,
what a request, eh?
Yeah. It was humble. It was very humble. But Nick, a lot of fun, man. Appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. All right.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Take care.
You got to take care, bud. All right, everybody. That was Nick Alberga. A lot of fun with him. Getting a little ribbon in there with the Isles Leafs rivalry, as you call it.
I think he was the original Biz with poking fun at Islander fans. Now, obviously, Nick did it when Tavares left, but the same way you said Blake walked, so Tavares can run.
It's so funny he brought that up. Like I haven't, like that hasn't entered my brain in years. Like I almost forgot that he left and signed a contract with those guys. But it's needless to say, it didn't have nearly the effect on Islander country that it did when Tavares.
So I was obviously very, very young when Blake left.
Right.
And my first time really, I was crawling. My first time though remembering really Blake and going against the Islanders was when Blake scored a spinorama goal in the shootout against the Islanders one year. That was before they made that move illegal. That's just the flashback to that. But yeah, Nick's great. He does tremendous work covering the Leafs and everything he does fantasy-wise. Funny guy, too. I mean, he's a character.
Yes.
And in this world, like Pete Blackburn, same type of thing. In this world where we need characters like that to,
absolutely.
to make things fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So good stuff from him. Tomorrow will be fun. Hopefully Tavares doesn't hit 1,000 points, but if I was a betting man, I'd probably put a lot of money on that bet because that's just what happens when you're the
Then again, Barzal's raised his game against the Leafs. So, and he's on fire right now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I mean, I'll never forget that first game when he came back to Long Island and Barzal had himself a night and so did the fans. I mean, that was just to be in that building for that night was unbelievable. They spared him no mercy at all.
Passionate fan base.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. So we're going to get into what's on tap real quick before we do the hero and then dive into questions room. But before we do all of that, I want to tell you all about our friends at Isles Fix. Islanders Country, get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the only Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at islesfix.substack.com. So let's go into what's on tap.
And now, it's time for What's on Tap, a look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule.
Yes, that's right. We're going to look ahead to see what the Islanders are doing this week. And if you were listening to our interview with Nick earlier, you know that they're playing the Maple Leafs tomorrow. John Tavares is going for 1,000 points. They're right there in third place in the Atlantic. Going to be a tough game. Mitch Marner is usually a thorn in the Islanders' side when he plays the Islanders, so we'll see what happens there. But that's how it starts on Monday. Then Wednesday, the Ducks come to town. They had a really nice start to the season. Now they are 1-9-0 in their last 10. They have fallen off a cliff. Maybe that's a game they can take advantage of like they did against the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll see. Friday, Boston comes to town. That will round out this 6-game homestand for the New York Islanders. That obviously will be a tough one. They hung with them for 50 minutes the first time they played them earlier in the season, and then the wheels fell off, as you might say. And then a fourth game this week. It's a busy schedule. Back-to-back, they go into Montreal to play the Canadiens. They are 12-12-3 currently, so there you have it. Those are the games coming up. Stefen, what do you have to say about those games?
Tomorrow night, Toronto, 7 o'clock start, not 7:30.
Good to know.
Hockey night in New York. I mean, it's a hockey night in Canada, in New York. So that's why it's a 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock start. I mean, listen, this is, again, maybe not as good as the Kings in terms of just everything clicking right now, but the Leafs are a very good team, offensively talented, offensively gifted, and if the Islanders' defense struggles to forecheck and slow them down, like you said, Marner's always a thorn for this team.
Yeah.
Matthews doesn't need a lot of time and space.
Like he scores a shorthanded goal against the Islanders every other game.
But again, it's a situation where we'll see who's in goal, but the Leafs' goaltending has been an issue, and the Islanders have to pounce early. I mean, that's what it's about against every team, right?
Yeah.
Pounce early against a goaltender that's been struggling, get into his head, get the goals, and make him work. And then, again, if you do get a lead, find a way to hold it on. Because, again, this is a Leafs team that has guys that could just come down the wing and score. Now, we'll see who's in goal. The guess is it will be, I would think it's Sorokin. They have gone back and forth, though, and I think Varlamov, he's on a 3-game
I think he gets the Ducks on Wednesday.
You have to think. So, the Islanders are going to need Sorokin to steal him a game. And again, every game against a tough team, you need a goaltender to make a few robbery saves. That's how it has to work in this league. So we'll see what happens. But then they go and play the Ducks. Ross Johnson's return. I wonder if I think he'll get a video tribute. I really do.
I mean, the guy's
fighting. Yeah,
he was here even though he didn't get in a lot of games. He was with the franchise for a very long time. So I think he will.
The good news is that he's getting playing time with the Ducks. He has 2 assists in the year. He has a goal that was disallowed.
Okay.
Doesn't count, but again, this is a Ducks team that's struggling mightily.
Yeah.
So were the Sharks. I mean, the Sharks actually were playing better hockey when they came to face the Islanders, so maybe their record wasn't indicative of how they actually are.
Didn't they go on to do the same thing to the Isles they did their next game, the Sharks?
They came back from, I think it was 4. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then the Ducks have been struggling mighty. Then you have the Bruins, and again, it's like the Leafs. Very good team. Their goaltending's different. Their goaltending's ridiculous.
Yeah, a little more well-rounded in Boston.
Yeah, and again, the Islanders, what got them in trouble was taking penalties. You saw them against the Kings last night that it really could have burned them. It burned them on one of the goals. You just got to stay out of the box against a team like that. In Montreal, again, you get a back-to-back where you have to go on the road against Montreal, another weak team. You got to find a way to beat the weaker teams. And again, when you give points away early, find a way to get points against these really tough teams, at least 1, maybe 2, to just counteract those lost points.
Yeah, for sure. So there's your what's on tap. 4 games on the slate for the Islanders. They round out this homestand and then go up to Montreal. We'll see how it goes, but if it's anything like the last 2 weeks, maybe they'll give you a heart attack here or there, but maybe they come out with more points than not. But 2 tough games, two teams that they should beat, 2 teams that are going to give them a hard time.
And they'll probably reverse it and lose the 2 bad teams and spank.
Well, you look at this past week, right? They go 2-0-1. You figure that overtime loss is going to be at the hands of the Kings, right? And they would have beaten the Sharks or the Jackets. But no, they beat the Kings. They lose to the Sharks. Nothing makes sense in hockey. But we'll see how this week goes. That's what's on tap. And now let's do the Hero of the Week. Ladies and gentlemen, when you hear this song, that means it's time for that Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero, which this week is the Hockey Night in New York wrap, featuring grilled chicken, buffalo sauce, mozzarella cheese, and avocado in a wrap. It is just magnificently delicious. Stefen, have you had one yet?
I have not.
Why don't you just lie and say that you did? Man?
I have.
Yeah, it's great, right?
I'm a big butterfly guy. The butterfly's so good.
I haven't had it. What's in that?
I can't tell you.
Okay, I'll just look at the menu. I'll go to BlueLineDeli.com to find out. All right, so featuring, I told you what it's featuring. Going to Blue Line Deli all week in Huntington. Get the Hockey Night in New York for half off. With that out of the way, Stefen Rosner, who is your Hero of the Week?
It's Anders Lee, and it was probably going to be Anders Lee regardless of the 2 goals last night, and I'll tell you why.
Tell me why, please.
So against Columbus, Barzal and Horvat just go off. Absolutely go off. And after the game, talking about Horvat and Barzal's chemistry, Barzal says, listen, we get the questions, but what Anders Lee did for us tonight wasn't on the score sheet, doesn't show up there, but his hard work, his ability to make passes, all things like that is why we had so much success. And then he does it, and it's just vintage Lee. Ferocious. In front of goal. You saw the emotion when he put back those rebounds. I mean, that is vintage.
He needed those, and you could see it.
Vintage, again, maybe people have doubted his leadership the last couple of years and saying, oh, it's time for a new captain. Your captain put the team on your back in the 3rd period against a very good team where there was no life, but I think they had 6 shots total in the 2nd period. There was no scoring chances. I mean, this was a quiet team, and Lee scores 1 to get the guys going, and then he finds a way to get the 2nd, and it's just one of those games that I think Lee had to have, not to silence haters, whatever. He's not going to care. But he's the captain of this team, and in a big moment, he comes through, and now he's on pace. We were talking about will he even score 5 goals this year. He's on pace for over 22 goals this year. And that, again, he's going to score 30. He's going to score close to 40 ever again in his career. Who knows? But the fact that he's gotten going, the fact that he's been such a catalyst for that top line, when there was a question mark of, do they have anyone that could play with those 2? And everyone questioned, why does Lambert keep putting Lee up there? It's not working. Right. Lee is doing, not him, I can't compare Lee and Engvall to being the same players at all, but when Engvall came last year and they just placed him on that second line, the points weren't coming at all. But that line was just working. For whatever reason, that line worked. And if you want to say Lee is no longer the Lee he was and he's slow and he's not great defensively, say whatever you want. But Horvat and Barzal are clicking, and Lee is playing a huge part in that, whether he's getting the points or not.
Yeah, it's been working, and stick with it while it is.
Why not?
And hopefully it continues to. But it's nice to see Lee kind of rediscover himself a bit here this season because, as you said, people are starting to question whether he's really lost a step. I know we talked about it a lot last year in the playoffs and towards the end of the season, and maybe he's slowing down a little bit to the point where, he's not going to be able to keep up. But this last stretch here, he's looked good. So good on you for picking Anders Lee. I'm picking his line mate, Bo Horvat, 2 assists against the Sharks, 2 goals and an assist against Columbus, and an assist last night against the Kings. He's on, what is he? He's on a 6-game point streak. He leads all forwards in time on ice. He's got 24 points in 25 games. Is it time to give Lou a little credit for this trade or what?
Well, first off, the fact that Beauvillier got flipped already. Ratu's a bottom 6 guy in Abbotsford. They got the guy Kronik with the pick, and obviously that guy's a top pairing defenseman now. So I guess you could you could say the trade was even in terms of the Canucks obviously have been really good. So those are two pieces don't matter right now, but just Barzal, they are now playing exactly what people thought of when the dynamic duo. Now, they got cut with that last year because of Barzal's injury, but got some little stats for you real quick before we get to questions brewing. But on November 25th, ahead of the Islanders game that night, Lou Lamoriello said he thinks that they could provide more. And he clarified saying he doesn't think they're doing enough. He just doesn't want to give them the satisfaction. There's not more to give. Since that date, Barzal's got 12 points in 6 games, 4 goals and 8 assists. That's third most points in that span. And Horvat's got 10 points, 4 goals, 6 assists in 7 games played. So if they haven't answered the call, clearly they have. Their phones, they're answering the phone every game. And I think the Islanders needed that. We talked about it so much where Nelson's line just couldn't be the one carrying every night. Right. And Barzal's line couldn't be great one game and not great another game. And now you're seeing that consistency. They're just fine. Barzal cut into the offense zone last night, threw a puck to nobody, but it landed right on Horvat's stick. You didn't even see Horvat there. So they are firing on all cylinders right now. And we asked Horvat about it, and he goes, there's still more. And that's scary.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goal coming around behind the net where he's basically on the goal line, barely has an angle, backhands it right in. Beautiful goal.
And then right after that, Barzal, you seem like, Barzal's gone back to the net. What is he doing? And then boom.
Yeah, listen, I feel like we haven't seen a duo like this on the Islanders for a long time, and sure, we're only, 26 games in or whatever it is, but it's nice to see these guys clicking because there was a big question mark on whether or not they were going to, given how that they played together last season, before and after Barzal went down with an injury, and, through the playoffs, they were a little dried up too, so it's nice to see them finally clicking. Who knew after a training camp, right?
And what's crazy, well, not crazy, but this is a league where it's all about matchups too, and when the Islanders' second line was doing so well, they're getting the top defenseman. Now that line's going, it is a nightmare. Because again, we're not even talking about Nelson's line, and they've been great. And we're not even talking about them. When you're not talking about Nelson, that says a lot because he's been the catalyst.
We're not talking about practice either.
We're never talking about practice.
We're talking about cash backing.
But it's a nightmare to have as an opposing coach now where you can't take a second off against that top line because they will burn you. And now Pajot's lines getting going with the way their chemistry. Holmstrom's been great. Gaudier's contributed offensively. Yeah. Clutterbuck scored a huge goal this past week, set up by Fasching. The Islanders, again, Nick just talked, you have to have, if it's by committee, it's got to be by committee on a nightly basis. And right now, the Islanders' top 6 have been phenomenal, which is also allowing the bottom 6 to have success as well.
No doubt about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are your heroes of the week, Anders Lee and Bo Horvat. And Ed, why don't you cut us to one more break before we jump in to Questions Brewing?
Sure thing, Sean.
Thanks, buddy.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow @HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Did you have a nice break? Well, it's time to get back on the couch for more Islanders therapy on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and perhaps listening on your favorite podcast providers. We're going to get into questions brewing, but before we do, Stefen, you had something you wanted to share with the audience?
Per cap friendly, Grant Hutton has been sent to Bridgeport, which tells me that, again, Sebastian Aho, we've seen him practice. He's still been on IR. He wasn't activated out, so it appears as if he will be activated out. Maybe when I look at the media side, he's already. We'll find out tomorrow, but Grant Hutton back to Bridgeport. It had to suck for Hutton when you going. I mean, let's be real. When Bortuzzo gets acquired, that showed how they feel about Hutton. And again, Hutton's done nothing but been a solid guy when he's gone in. Right. Clearly, Lou wanted experience when he went and got Riley, experience when he went and got Bortuzzo. Hutton, there's no, you look at, he's going on waivers, but no one's going to claim him, things like that. So Hutton back to Bridgeport tells me that Aho might be ready to go for tomorrow.
There you go. We shall see, but thanks for the live update. Ed, Jay, how we doing, guys?
I'm doing well. I forgot to
Are you
unmute
sure?
myself. Yeah.
Okay.
We got Sleepy J back here. He's
Is he doing all right too?
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we
staring into Jake the Snake's soul?
Why don't we get into questions brewing? Why don't we do some questions from the audience?
Yeah, I have a question, Sean.
Ed, please ask a question.
What's up with the Canucks hat? Are you you like hockey or?
I do enjoy the sport of hockey. Yeah, I'm a hockey fan first, man. I just happen to be an Islander guy as well. But every now and then I like to show support for other teams around the league.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of teams,
sure.
MJ Beckman asks this: are the Islanders now a fun team to watch? Lots of goals, points every night, physical team, and thrilling comebacks.
Thrilling comebacks. Well, MJ, if you're asking, that tells me that you feel that way. So I guess that's a little exciting. Yeah, I mean, they're more fun, and they're certainly interesting. That's for sure.
They keep you entertained.
Well, yeah, whether they're blowing leads or coming back more recently against LA, I'd have to say that that's why I've been calling this a weird season all year, just because it hasn't been the same Islander team that we're used to, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around who this team is going to be for the remainder of the year. They're scoring more goals. I remember it was only a week or so ago when I looked at their goals for, and it was only a 2.5, and they've bumped that all the way up to 3 since then, just with all these games that they're scoring 4 or 5 goals, and of course they get 7 against Columbus. So yeah, I guess they're a little more fun to watch, and they'll be even more fun if they figure out a way to clamp down on third periods. But we haven't seen enough of it yet. But they're heading in the right direction, so I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, they're fun. Next up from Trache19, when all the defensemen are healthy, who sits and what should the pairings be?
First off, the fact that everyone's going to be healthy at the same time, given what's happened, I'm going to say 0. I mean, they haven't had a healthy defense since opening night. It feels like that. But when everybody comes back, I think if Pelech comes back soon, it'd be Pelech, Pulak, and we'll see how long they're out. Because, again, right now, Romanov and Dobson have been good. I don't think you don't need to go back to that. So you have Pelech, Pulak, Romanov, Dobson, and to me, I just don't see how Riley comes out. And I think
the 2 new guys on the bottom pair?
No, I'd say Mayfield. Listen, has Mayfield struggled? Is Mayfield 100% healthy? I did a piece the other day where Mayfield said he's still dealing with the ankle. I think he won't be 100% the whole year.
Right.
But I just don't see him coming out. You gave him also 7 years. I don't think to start off his thing. I mean, listen, if you feel like you have to sit him. But I think it's going to be Riley Mayfield, and I think Aho is going to be an extra.
Okay.
I also think that, again, it all matters what Bolduc's doing. And Bortuzzo, you have options, which is great, and I think the Islanders are in a good spot. I don't think if they have to waive Bortuzzo, it's oh no.
Right.
Again, he's been in that situation before. Maybe he doesn't even get claimed, and you have him down there. Again, Bolduc, with how he's playing right now, he's going to get claimed. People could say, oh, he'll sneak through. Other teams are going to take the chance on him, whether they think he's going to be an elite guy or not, because he showed at least sparks of he could be a top 4 defenseman with everything he does. So yeah, I think Aho might go back to being an extra, but that's only until Riley. Again, Riley's been an extra over his career for a while, and I'm not saying anything wrong with his game, but there's a reason for that.
Maybe they platoon.
Yeah, and that's not a bad idea either.
Right.
Especially with the amount of Mayfield still being banged up, when those guys come back, if they're still dealing with some lingering issues. But yeah, I think Aho might find himself as an extra, depending how well how well Riley plays, but also when these guys come back. Because, again, Pelech could come back in 2 weeks. Pelech could come back in a month. Pulock could be out for 2 months. Just because he's on IR right now doesn't mean he won't go on LTIR. We don't know what the extent of the injury is. We don't know if he's still getting tests. So right now, it's really hard to say what the pairings will be because completely healthy, I don't think we're going to have that for a while.
I agree.
All right. Enzab09 asks, what was the major difference in third periods from the Sharks game to the LA game?
I think, go for it, John.
No, I think it was what we mentioned before was that they actually just went in for the kill. They didn't sit back. They tried to pour it on. They tried to add more goals, specifically in the Columbus game, where they were like, okay, we've been here before. We've tried to clamp down on things. It hasn't worked. So they're up 4-2 going into that third period, and they decide let's make it 5-2, 6-2, and it ultimately ends up being 7-3. And it obviously worked wonders. Now, it worked wonders against a team towards the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works out if they happen to go into a third period lead against Toronto or maybe even Boston this week, right? We'll see how that works out. But it certainly worked against a team like Columbus, and maybe that's at the very least a strategy they use against teams that are more towards the bottom of the standings where they can have a little more fun, if you will, against lesser teams in the league. And as far as the Kings game goes, I mean, they had no choice but to pour the offense on because they're down by 2 goals, and it ends up working out. And Stefen did a great job talking about Anders Lee's contributions and how good he looked. And look, I think the good thing is that after all those blown leads, after all the discouragement and just the down in the dumps that everybody's been over those games, is that they found a way to fight back and bounce back, right? I said that talking earlier about the loss to the Sharks game because they could have gone in the tank after that.
Shark Tank. I'll see myself out.
That's a game that really could have buried this team a little bit, right? But they're a veteran team, and they've fought through adversity before, so I think it's encouraging that they were able to turn things around after that game and get back to their winning ways.
We were brainstorming this question earlier. I figured I'd get your guys' take on it. Offside NYC. They asked, "What should we name our who should we name our next cocktail after?"
Wow, love the question.
Yeah,
Stefen,
we were
you got any
brainstorming
ideas?
that. I asked if they had an old fashioned, and they do.
Yeah, I mean that's a no-brainer. I'd be a little disappointed in Nick if he didn't have that already.
Yeah.
I was.
But
I thought I was a winner with that one.
I think Holmstrom's got to get one, or Gauthier.
Okay.
It's got to be an under-the-radar drink, but that comes through like every time you pour it,
Okay. Maybe you got a tie a White Russian in there somewhere with Romanov, Sorokin, and Varlamov, right?
You mentioned Anders Lee before, and it popped in my head. Long Island Iced Lee. Is that a little out of turn
I think
there?
if memory serves, and Nick might be able to correct us here in the chat, but I think he had a variation on a Long Island Iced Tea. I just don't remember who was involved in that, but Long Island Iced Lee, okay.
Yeah, it's got the ice in there,
Sure.
Yeah, I think you need to give love to the bottom 6 guys. Obviously, I'm assuming he's got fourth line stuff, but like Holmstrom and Gauthier, guys like that,
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Love it.
We'll brainstorm those.
Okay.
Svedka, Swedish, some Swedish Svedka. I don't know, is that a thing?
Svedka is a Swedish vodka.
Yeah, so you have Holmstrom.
I think.
Yeah, it's a thing. I don't know. I'm not a bartender.
We got to get a pun in there, though. Anyway, next up from Mr. Tom Boyle. Has Bortuzzo ever been suspended in his NHL career?
Probably. I don't know. Fined. I mean, he's definitely had his, I forgot, I think was it a couple of years ago against, I think it was the Stars. I want to say he was behind the net. I think it was the Stars. And he barely cross-checks somebody, and that guy flops. And he gets up and he flops. He looks at the ref.
Yeah.
And the last time he flops, Bortuzzo really just crushes him after that. Hits him twice or whatever. And he's like, if you're gonna keep flopping, I'm gonna make you earn that flop.
Right.
He's a guy that plays not on the edge. I don't think he usually crosses the line. Now, he had his issue with Pelech. I said the Nelson thing, but I think a part of the reason he's here is because he's a physical guy. And he has that grit. And I mean, if you win a cup, you automatically have that in you because you needed that to win the cup, especially that St. Louis team. Bortuzzo was actually the guy that got into the fight at practice. Do you remember that? When the Blues were in last place, they get into a fight at practice. I don't remember who he fought. The next day, puppies are brought onto the ice, and they go from last place.
How do you know this?
I just stupid memory.
This went way deep.
All right, because there was a team fight. It was a legitimate fight at practice, so they brought puppies
I know how to
in.
solve this puppies.
Yeah. When is that
Simple
not?
question, Stefen. Has he been suspended or not?
I'm buying time because I have no idea. Jake, can you look it up now? But they get puppies in, right? And then they go on to go from last place to make the playoffs to first place before the year's over, make the playoffs.
So you're
win a
telling
cup.
me, Stefen, that the Islanders could have solved this blown third period lead thing if they just brought some puppies in to Northwell?
Oh my God!
I mean, yeah.
Are you kidding me here?
I mean, they didn't. They were also weren't in last place and losing games every. And
felt like last place.
It did, but puppies solve everything.
They do.
He was suspended. There you go.
Thank you, Jake the Snake.
What was the suspension? Do you know?
Jake, not from State Farm.
Okay, cross-checking.
There you go. So,
4 games.
Right. Long-winded answer. Yes.
Puppies.
Yes,
Leave pets out of it next time.
Yeah.
Aisle 72 asks, this team is very different from the Trotz team. What do you think their identity is, and is it sustainable?
Well, I mean, up until last week, I said their identity was blowing third-period leads, and I guess since they've kind of gotten away from that in the last 2 games, I don't know. Stefen, maybe you have a better answer than I do, but now they're trying to get away from that. I'm not sure. Again, I was kind of saying it before. I'm still trying to figure this team out because they're definitely playing a different style than when they did, even when they started winning their games later in the season last year when they were kind of going more Barry Trotz style. And it was like a hybrid of what Lambert was trying to do in the early going in the season. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely trying to score more goals. They are scoring more goals. And up until recently, they weren't able to kind of balance it with the defense. It seems like they've proven capable of balancing the defense with that now. And maybe that's what we'll see going forward, where they're a little more opportunistic with the offense, and while sacrificing the D a little bit, but holding down the fort with guys like Sorokin and Varlamov.
Yeah, I think their identity is just offensive reliability. Is that even a saying? They're just offensively talented. We know that, and I think their identity is. I don't want to say outscore your opponents because of course you have to do that to win, but it's definitely not defense. It's just not. Watching this game, the system, it's not, because the defense has struggled way too much for that to be their identity anymore. And I think that's the biggest question is, if it's not going to be defense, what is it? So I think it's going to be, you have to, this team has to. It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress, but it's going to be a team, I think, come the end of this year that's just going to be early. They show early in games. Offensive outburst early in games, and then add. That's really it, because I don't think they're going to have the defensive talent to close these games out. I just don't. Relying solely on defense. I think it's got to be, if they're going to win these games, it's going to be what they did against Columbus, where even if they don't score, it's just keep that offensive mindset going for 60 minutes instead of 40 and then cutting it after that. They have to just, they're only going to win if they keep their offensive mind going the entire game.
Yeah, I think that was Stefen and I's roundabout way of saying we're not sure what their identity is yet. Yeah.
We have our very own Jake the Snake in the chat tonight.
Uh-oh.
Could have just talked to us.
Oh, well.
Maybe we'll give him
human interaction.
He's using the official format.
Okay.
He's waiting in line like everybody else. He's playing the rules.
What did Jake not from State Farm have to say?
Jake the Snake asked, if Tavares gets his 1,000th point tomorrow at UBS, what do you think the fan reaction will be in the building?
Oh, a heavy rain of boos.
Heavy rain.
Maybe a few claps here and there.
Any levers?
Any what?
Levers.
Levers? I don't think anybody's going to leave the building.
Well, what I will say is it depends if the Islander, if they get to the 1,000th point, down 5-1 in the third period, like, no one's going to care. If his 1,000th point is the game-winning goal in overtime, like, yeah, that changes things a little bit.
Heavy booze.
I think it seems
heavy booze. I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say Islander fans still aren't over that whole thing.
They'll never be.
Right. I mean, that's still he's probably still gonna get booed when he touches the puck.
Not that it's like the Potvin sucks thing, but like it will never end for Tavares until he retires. Yeah. And even when if he shows his face ever on Long Island again. Like, in person, no one's going to boo him. Like, people think, like, oh, yeah, they see him at the grocery store, like, they'll boo him. They won't.
I hate you.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. But, like, if he comes to the arena when he retires, first of all, I don't know if they would ever bring him back. Like, in terms of, like, they have the old alumni come back. I think it's a little too...
right away, but they will.
Yeah.
They will. I mean, I'd like to think that one day Islander fans
one day Islander fans should get over it.
Be at peace with it.
Yeah, and it also depends if the Islanders win. At some point, that, like, if the Leafs find a way to win a cup with Tavares before the Islanders find a way to win a cup with who they got, like, that sour taste will never leave their mouths.
Yeah, interesting question. What do you got, Ed?
The Wheel 89 asks, a lot of Parise talk a few weeks ago, but it's been quiet ever since. Any update?
Was there a lot of Parise talk a few weeks ago? I haven't heard a thing about him besides that
I remember his name popping up a little
bit. He was
bit.
Skating. That was
right,
it.
Right. And we talked about
he was just skating, and I mean, this is a guy, by the way. What is it?
Is there any room for him?
The question is, one, would he come to the Islanders right now? Just in terms of, would he want to go to a safer team if he wants to?
I don't think he's going anywhere other than the island, buddy.
Well, I thought maybe. Again, the fact that Jersey's fallen off, I thought maybe with the way they started off out of the gate, like goes back to Jersey where it all started, things like that. But What I will say is for the Islanders, like, sure, you want his energy back, but like the fact that Holmstrom has played the way he has, and I wrote a story about like not that he is Parise, they play a different style, but he's on pace for over 20 goals. He's playing on the penalty kill. Him and Pajot have established some great chemistry. The only thing I could think of is Parise going on the top line just because of the hard work ethic to help that group. But then where does Lee go? Listen, I think they certainly wouldn't say no if he said I'm coming back. But I don't think it's a need as much as it might have been maybe before the season started.
I think it would take some injuries at forward for it to happen at this point. That's how I look at it. Let's get one more in there, Ed.
Well, first time chatter just came in. Hey. Mr. John Price, 15, asked, basically, what is Nip? What is the mascot Nip? What is that?
It's a great ending.
I'm glad you asked, actually. We might have addressed this before, but either way. So there was this gentleman on Twitter. He's a hockey fan, but what he did was he ran all 32 teams through an AI, and he basically had the AI generate new mascots for all 32 teams. And he shared it with the world on Twitter, right? And so there was just a new mascot literally for every team, and they were just laugh out loud hilarious. Like most of the vast, some were terrifying, and others were just like so hilarious. Like I was literally in tears looking at some of these mascots, and so Nip was one of those guys. I thought he was hilarious. So I ended up messaging him on the side and being like, "Hey man, love your work." And I was like, "Listen, you mind if we have a little fun with Nip? I might want to use him like as a mascot for the show or something like that." And he said, "That's why I did it." He's like, "Have fun with it." He gave us his blessing. And so I was like, awesome. So, look, we got Sparky up there. We got Niles up there. I kind of like to clown around with the mascots and stuff. And I thought Nip was hilarious. So we kind of just brought him in. So, I think he's a funny guy. Brought him in, and that's pretty much the story. But thanks for asking, John.
Yeah. Love Nip. I think he's my favorite.
Nip's tips. I got to bring him back. He's been quiet for a couple of weeks, but...
he looks like a Sesame Street character. Like, he looks like Elmo.
Right? He's kind of like an amalgamation of like different Muppets or Sesame Street characters.
I just love that Nip's what came out. Like, I don't know how any technology...
The fact that it's Nip,
I just don't know how any technology works in general, let alone AI.
You use the word Nip for like being cold. It's terminology. It's a bit nippy out, it's cold ice.
Like
nip,
sure. That's a good point.
It fits.
Yeah. Or those caramels, Nips? You used to eat those? You ever have those? Yeah, Jake's nodding his head. He knows.
I mean, I hate Sparky. I'm a Niles guy over Sparky.
Listen, if we're talking Niles versus Sparky, Niles is obviously the winner.
Well, Sparky came from the Long Island Dragons, the indoor arena football. Like, it wasn't for the Islanders.
What do Dragons have to do with
well, that's the thing. He was a second-hand mascot for the Islanders. He was the New York Dragons mascot.
That's why
maybe
I put
to save
Niles'
a little cash, they brought him over to the Islanders, and look, the kids love him. I get it, but I mean, that was Niles' job, and he took it from him. Niles had the job back in the 90s. Listen, I give the Islanders credit. I thought when they brought Niles back last year, it was just going to be a one-off for the reverse retro jersey. So I was very pleased to see that they were keeping him around. But I'm just waiting until Sparky has some sort of in-office controversy where they end up having to let him go and Niles can take his job back full time.
There needs to be a Nip revolution.
Nip hopefully can kind of get taken under the wing of Niles. You know what I mean? You bump Sparky out, let him go back to the Dragons or something like that, whatever it is. Let him mascot some football. Is there even still an arena football league?
I don't know.
Right.
Not at the Coliseum.
Jake, do you know? You watch other sports.
Is arena football just, they still do that?
I don't know. Like,
box lacrosse is really big now.
Yeah,
like just indoor lacrosse.
Maybe you can mascot a lacrosse team. Yeah, I'm a Niles guy, but there you go. That's the story behind Nip, and I think we'll end it there.
End on Nip.
We'll wrap it up. Yes, folks. So I want to send a big thanks out to you for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and listening later on your favorite podcast providers. A huge thanks to Nick Alberga for coming on, being a good sport, talking Toronto Maple Leafs and New York Islanders. And also want to send a big thanks, of course, to our sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Check out the menu or order ahead at BlueLineDeli.com. Also, big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at mainstboardgamecafe.com. Also, sending a big thanks to Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law. Nobody likes going to court, but hey, if you have to, Razor and Kniff are ready to fight for you. Give them a call at 516-742-7600 for a free consultation. And of course, a big thanks to Jay Belsky and Floored Media here for turning on the lights, the cameras, the microphones, allowing us to have this wonderful show. Having a couch for Jake to sit on.
When he wakes up, I'll tell him you said so.
A pair of headphones for Ed to wear while he hangs out behind the board here. So big thanks to Floored Media. Stefen, where can we find you on social media and the web?
Yes, at Stefen_Rosner, STEFEN_ROSNER, the Hockey News Islander site, and NHL.com.
There you go. You can follow myself on the Twitter at Shoney Hockey. You can follow the show on all social media platforms at Hockey Night NY. And remember, folks, to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you missed the shows live on Twitch and you still want to watch, you can always subscribe to us on YouTube. We have all shows archived there, so you can check them out during the week 24/7, 365. So please do that. If you haven't given us a review, do that too. That helps us out. That helps spread the word. So tell your friends, tell your family, all of that good stuff. And with that out of the way, for Jake the Snake, Jay, Ed, and Mr. Stefen Rosner, I've been Sean Cuthbert. We have been Hockey Night New York. We will see you next week.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah, pal.
Thank you.
There you go. How many days left?
I don't know. I'm so bad.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Merry Chrysler.